Bullshit.
The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Laramore's men's and women's designer clothing. Free shipping, free returns. Shop men's and women's designer clothing, shoes, accessories, jewelry, and more online at laramores.com or in-store downtown Pittsburgh. It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Enam Noor, CEO of Ensighten Health. But first, let's cut the bullshit. You're laughing already. We hear day in and day out about millennials. Enam and I have had many conversations about how people describe millennials, the challenges, the demands, the strengths, the weaknesses. Generational descriptions can be helpful and certainly generate discussion. These generational generalizations also can lead to misperceptions, mismanaging, and missed opportunities. Whether describing baby boomers, Generation X, or millennials, the problem is that the generations span 18 to 20 years. It's obvious that the oldest segment within a cohort is going to be quite different from the youngest segment in that same generation. That's why open, clear communication still rules the day regardless of generation. Our communication problems often stem from poor or non-existent communication. The lack of effort in trying to understand the person or group you're communicating with becomes an issue. For example, I've heard and read that millennials are known for their outspokenness. That's why I've often tried to communicate the same way with millennials on my team or who work at clients. A recent survey from PR firm Weber Shandwick backs up my instinctual approach. I love when there's research to support some of the crazy things I do. Nearly half the millennials in the Weber Shandwick study say CEOs have a responsibility to speak up on important societal issues. This is far more than the 28% of boomers and Gen Xers who feel that way. Half of millennials, actually 51%, say they would be more likely to buy from a company led by a CEO who speaks out on an issue they agree with. And 44% would be more loyal to their company if their CEO took a public position on a hotly debated issue. This doesn't mean all leaders should be talking about a bunch of issues just to try to make millennials happy. On cue. It means that if you're passionate about something and can convey your position in an authentic, professional, and respectful way, you have an opportunity to reach and influence a key target market from a recruitment, retention, and customer acquisition standpoint. It's time for leaders to stop generalizing generations and start communicating more about what you believe about not only your company, but also your community. In other words, cut the BS. Our guest today is Enam Noor, a results-driven senior executive with more than 15 years of proven results in marketing, technology, and management. Enam is a talented entrepreneur who drives rapid growth by seizing business opportunities and penetrating lucrative markets. He's going to walk us through that today, how he's already had a couple of companies and he's growing Ensighten Health significantly. And Ensighten Health is a data-driven decision-making technology he's trademarked that connects industry-experienced marketing strategy with technology to provide a results-driven management platform for their healthcare clients. Enam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me. Honored and excited to have a little good BS conversation.
Yeah, that's it. We've got to make sure we rein in the
no BS,
and make sure since we're both leaders at our companies, we need to be outspoken to millennials,
provocative, right?
Outspoken and provocative. Also, maybe take a stance here and there on some issues.
Yep.
Talk to me about your career journey, real quick. When I met you and we started talking more and more about working together and the possibility and the vision, and we were talking about, you were speaking at a conference and we brainstormed on that. It's really interesting, your background to date. So go back and even talk about the early years and what formed your mindset and approach, and then walk us through your career to this date.
It's always interesting when you have to look back, because in your life cycle, when you start doing stuff, you think you're making some changes, you kind of forget where you came from most of the time, because you're so focused in what you're doing, right? So I started thinking it through when we were talking that, we would have this conversation. Some of the things that when I look back, and it all makes sense why I do what I do. when I was a teenager, this was like late 80s, makes me feel kind of old. But I was very much into computers. And back in the days, computers were not that cool. And I taught myself how to type because that was a cool thing. Like there was a software, like, a game, like learn how to type. Little that I knew when I went to college, I was a computer programmer. And computer programmers have to type. But again, I'm trying to like look back and how I came where I came. One of the lines I still remember my college advisor told me, which is, I don't remember anything else. Class is what he did. He said, look, if you want to code programming, if you want to build software for people, a good minor could be psychology. You want to understand people. And you know what? I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I'll take it. I've done it. I had no idea, like, why am I taking psychology class? Only cool thing was it was night classes. All the, like, female students would come in. They all, like, working and coming in. So it was, like, cool thing for me, a freshman in the college. But long story short, as I went through my career journey, everything has been around building technology for people to use. And I think I have combined those two throughout the process of my first company, where I'm at now, is really understanding people's need and deliver a technology to solve a problem. When you do that, it all ties in with a lot of data points, right? So again, as I got older, I got wiser, I learned better. But that's kind of like, it still ties in. I never look back and it's like, why am I doing what am I doing? There's always a nice story and a path. It connects the dots. That's how I see it, where it all started. So obviously after college, I started my company.
So your first job was immediately as an entrepreneur. You did not go work anywhere like corporate?
Actually, my first job was actually a pretty well-paid job in college. When I was in college, it was a paid intern project where we were building e-commerce before e-commerce. So this was a complete catalog system that I was tasked to build and get paid pretty well, but it would stay in a 3.5 floppy diskette. So the sales guys would hand that over when they're in a business meeting, and they could put that in their computer and browse through all the catalog, what they want to order. But because there was no internet, I'm talking early 90s, they would print it and fax the order in. So that was e-commerce before e-commerce. And it's funny, like, I've seen Amazon coming up, I've seen Google coming up. Like, I feel like a dinosaur, but I'm not. But it's pretty neat to see that. So that was my first job, what I did. I took a couple small jobs here and there. It was all around, like, building some data, building some visualization. But very quickly I figured out, like, what, I can't build and then don't see the result because the corporations has their little needs. That's when I started my company. So I probably worked for a couple of years here and there, different jobs all around technology. Very quickly I said, nope, I got to do it my own. And that's when I started my company in Chicago.
And what was the first company?
The company was called DESME. It's a short for Design Media. So we did a lot of marketing analytics. And this was late 90s. Going into the 2000s, the initial stage of the Googles coming out. So we've done a lot of like search engine optimization, things like that. We actually did pretty good. In 2007, we were ranked one of the top 10 firm in the country to do what we were doing, and we were the smallest company to do that. But then we started adding more technology around it. So it was never really just an agency. It was more of a marketing solution that was driven by technology. And a lot of digital and online part of that. So I've done that for about 10 years before merging the company with a larger marketing group out in East Coast.
Let me go back a little bit. So where did you grow up and how did you end up in Chicago?
So my parents are from Bangladesh. The longest I've ever stayed in any city is in Chicago. That's about 20-some years I've stayed in. But I traveled a lot because my dad grew up and did his education in England. Then he went back to Bangladesh for a little stint of time. And when it was my time, I was 17. And I say, I want to go U.S. and do my education. And since then, I've been on my own. I said, that's what I want to do. And I picked a city where I had no relatives, nobody, because I wanted to do it on my own. And that journey, again, kind of goes back.
And you picked Chicago?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I had a couple scholarships from a few different places. I'm like, got a bunch of relatives. I want to go. Not because I'm not social. I I looked at that as that was my opportunity to build a foundation for who I want to be. I didn't know a lot back then, but I think that's the best decision I've done. I'm still, very close with my family and everybody, but I think that I learned a lot of lesson, because when you're out there on your own, you're battling, you learn. It humbles you. What you have to face. So again, that's where it all started. So I'm kind of like very diverse in terms of where I lived. So when I moved to East Coast, that was about 7 years ago. So now I've been in East Coast for 7 years. So like a lot of different places. But Chicago, I honestly, like, if I were to look back, cultures and stuff like that, Chicago is what it reminds me. That's kind of a home to me. But again, my whole adult life, I was in Chicago. 17, moved there, stayed there till, 7 years ago when I moved to East Coast.
So you start the company, you said DesMe, and it was Design Media.
Yep.
And I really like the idea, and you're way ahead of the curve in 97, 98 you start that
98, 99.
And you're really focusing on marketing analytics way before a lot of people had a high degree of sophistication.
Absolutely.
There. Talk about the sales pitch and how that went back then, because I'm sure some people loved it, jumped on board quickly, but others probably went, what are you talking about? Because you could still get away with just being mainly creative back then.
Absolutely. And this is why I like your approach when you say no BS marketing, right? Our approach was back then, you want a website for what? Just because it's a www doesn't make sense. Website should do something for you. Is it generating leads for you?
Correct.
Are you selling products? If you want to get, like, as transition gets into, okay, now there are e-commerces, right? The point becomes, like, why do you want to just an online store? You need to be able to sell. How are you going to get the traffic in? Part of that no BS approach was, look, you getting hits. What do hits mean? What's converting? So like our value prop always was around numbers, how to drive people to the conversion. And as I was saying, the psychology part, the user experience, I would heavily get involved in those A/B testing and stuff like that. Why would people do this? And if they do this, what are they thinking? I always try to put myself as the consumer when I'm solving a problem. And I try to go, would I buy this? And if I buy this, and again, any decision, right? Whether that's an online store or, you buy into somebody's services, then I go, did I buy it because I just had to? Or did I buy it because I was excited? I was happy. Yeah, I want it, right? So I always try to trigger when it comes about, the conversion. If it's online, how do you trigger that to the next step? So I always would tell clients, like, you're spending so much time with your agency, graphic designers. It's not about the pretty design. It's about the effective design that's going to drive people to the next step. And don't worry about the final step. Your goal is to people to go from homepage to the next step. So is that content good enough to take that next action? We would see back then on the website, everything is up there. No, the best navigation is no navigation. You should guide the people through. So our selling point was, we're not just building a technology. We're building technology that works for you. So that's, what we started building. But again, this is funny. Like, we look at Google Analytics now. Everybody can look at Google Analytics. Back then, we used to do that in Excel. There was no Google Analytics. You would take the data, put it on Excel. Like, I've seen it. And then people weren't even doing that. They were just like, I have a website. I have an email. Like, I've seen that. It's pretty funny. Like, I have one of the first Yahoo email address that I still have it, which is pretty cool. Like, but again, I can tell this story to my kids. I have, teenage kids, and then they don't believe me. That's a pager. But again, even around technology, the growth. So again, to keep it short, like, that's what we did. We had a value proposition. It's not just another marketing tool. It's a marketing tool as an extension of your business, and it needs to do what your business should do. It's just an online store, 24/7 open, right? And you have nobody to assist. So it has to be good. So
exactly. And I love a couple of the things. I talk a lot about creativity for creative's sake. That's one of my problems when people want to be creative for creative's sake rather than saying what is the solution we're trying to achieve.
Yep.
So I really think you were ahead of the curve there. And I love the whole thing about the hits, because I remember back when I was in my corporate chief marketing officer jobs, I would say to people, I almost don't even really care the hits. It's what happens after the hit. And that was just that mindset from probably 97 to 2007. And then you finally started seeing more of a shift now.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that's, it evolved. But again, you got into an industry, like it was funny. I love cooking, and I'm very passionate about cooking, and I travel a lot, and I enjoy like local meal, and then I try to break it down, like the culture through the food. And I remember when I started my company, because, again, it was like I was pretty wild. I'm like, I want to open up a restaurant. Or do I open up a company around technology? But our mind is very analytics, and I done some research, and I found out, like, hey, 9 out of 10 restaurants don't make it. And in the 90s, late 90s, 9 out of 10 tech companies were making it. I was like, I'll go do that. And that's how, like, it was funny. Like, what if I did? A lot of times I think, what if I did start a restaurant? Where would it go by now? Maybe I would have a restaurant with a lot of technology around it, which is a lot of restaurants are turning into,
yes.
right? But it was funny. Like, that was a big move that I made. And I'm not kidding. I was very close to do either or. And I said, if I'm going to start, let's do the one has a higher success rate. So went with technology.
When we come back with Enam Noor, CEO of Insight, and he's going to tell us how he moved forward with Desme, his first company, and where he is with Insight. And Larimer's Men's and Women's Designer Clothing is the place in Pittsburgh for men's clothing and women's clothing. That's a perception. I want to make sure everybody knows that for decades people knew about it on the men's side, but they've fast and continued to grow on the women's clothing side. The dedicated staff, including Roy Gross, who's been working with me for far longer than I'd like to admit, of course, Tom Michael, who's been on the show, and the whole team have enabled me to look better than I thought I could for years. If you've not checked out Larimor's yet, you need to today. You can shop online at larimores.com or in-store in downtown Pittsburgh. We're with Enam Noor, the CEO of Insight. He walked us through some great philosophies and ideas of how he was a courageous entrepreneur very early. So you had Design Media, Desme, a company you started in the late 90s, and in 2007 you said you were ranked one of the top 10 in the country, even though you weren't as big as the other 9, on marketing solution-driven companies with analytics. What happens then? Were you able to, what makes you make a move with Desme?
I think when I started, it was not very focused and organized around, how the tech bubble started, right? All the companies comes in, they go IPO, they make a ton of money. I'm like, well, I had that idea. Why didn't I do it? I remember Career Builder, when it first came out, there was a Chicago-based company. I was actually one of their consultants, try to help them out. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But then I keep looking like, whoa, what am I doing? Because I always thought I'll never retire from my company. This is my company. This is my baby. And then the trigger happened in my brain. It's just look, I think if you want to be in technology, there's 2 paths. You can be more like the agency you keep building, or you can build your own IP and still do the same thing in terms of delivering results for people, whoever that is. And that's when I started thinking is the path Desme was going, at best it just becomes a large agency, right? I wanted to build a technology that is just like any other technology we hear. We hear the stories about the Facebooks of the world, the Googles of the world. And I always look back as this is in my time frame. I have seen those coming out, and none of those conceptually to me ever look like that's impossibility, right? So that's what started driving me towards then is no, I need to make that next move. And what that would be is kind of like the transition and eventually turn into the Insight and Health platform that we have now.
Exciting. Now, you're on to something, I'm certain of it. We work a lot in this healthcare space, so we've been able to see your ideas and implementation and your solutions, and we've been able to hear the problems from various clients. And we also know some of the sort of competitors, but what I like about what you've got going on is you've clearly defined where you are in that market. And so your challenge now has been, in my estimation, is that the people that you're talking to don't quite know yet exactly which box to put you in, because that's the challenge I have too. Our company, you go in to talk to a client, they go, what are you, an ad agency? No. Yeah. Are you a Marcom company? No. Are you a PR firm? No. Oh, I don't know what to do. They don't say this, but they're looking at you like, I hate this guy because I can't just put him in a box. Yeah. So let's talk about what Insight and Health does and what type of customers you would work
Yep.
with. What's your ideal customer look like, and how do you solve problems for them?
Absolutely. So Insight and Health, we work into the health insurance marketplace. Our clients are health insurance companies. They're also known as the payers. The end result in a 30,000 feet level, what we're helping the health insurance company is improving the health preventative care for their customers. And if the customers are getting healthier, it's a win-win for everybody, right? It's lowering their premium, lowering the cost for the insurance company, and what a great idea, right? We want everybody to be healthy. Obviously, our platform still requires an insurance company to be on it, and their customers can utilize it to get better, right? So we can't just go to the 300 some million people and say like, hey, use it. But that's a start. But our goal is to truly, I look at it as, it's great to build a company, a platform, but I think at the end of the day, I know you mentioned a lot of the things earlier, like the millennials are looking at this. It's not a direct cause, but if what I'm doing can also impact and do something good, that's actually a good thing. Believe it or not, these health insurance companies will spend millions of dollars to identify segments that are helpful for them, for their bottom line, and want to trigger conversation with them because they're being, rated by the government. If you're running Medicare Advantage, the stars, data, and whatnot, it all becomes a numbers game. Not because that's all they want to do, but think about it. Why does it have to be a numbers game? If I have 300,000 members and most of them all are healthier and they're doing their preventative screening, they're going and doing what they should be doing, isn't that everybody wants them to be? So how do you trigger the consumer, right? So taking all the knowledge that I have had in the past, like we talked about it, like people come into your website, but they don't buy because it's a consumer, right? So we build the platform around keeping the consumer first. And I mean it when I say that because it does drive the consumer. And we allow many ways to trigger that, meaning a lot of time consumers don't want to do it on their own. They pick up the phone and ask the customer service like, hey, so we empower them. What if the consumer goes to the doctor's office? Because that's not the insurance company, right? So we are centralizing the activity around that person and trying to trigger activity that they really should be doing at a much more humanized, personalized level. Because that's a behavioral change. People don't want to go do their screenings, even though it's paid for. Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes I don't want to know if I have any problems, right? But it's the non-knowing don't trigger them to change. So we think with time, we can impact the behavioral change. And if the behavioral change happens with mass, no pun intended, mass solution, we can create an impact. And I think it then really would help our clients too, because their members are healthier, which is what they want. So we don't want to just forget about our clients, right? But we're trying to do it holistically. And if you ask any insurance company, their marketing team, they'll always say on their big whiteboard, they put the customer in the middle. They do say customer is in the middle. And we come in and we say, this is no BS. We will make that happen. That's what we're doing. Uh-huh. That's what we're impacting, right? And empowering the consumer.
I want to talk a little bit because we have marketers that listen to the show regularly.
Yep.
We have executives and leaders that listen to the show. We also end up getting students and early grads because of my speaking at universities and also teaching. So I want to make sure that the marketers hear what I believe is a competitive advantage for you and a unique selling proposition. Explain how right now those big companies might be working with a Marketo, and they might be working with a Tableau, and they also are working with someone on the wellness side. Talk about how there's all these entities, and the companies haven't quite figured out how to mesh that together, and how Insight and Health helps it with that.
Yep. Yeah, and I think depending on what sector they're dealing with, the health care is very highly regulated marketplace. For instance, if you're working in the Medicare Advantage, which is a lot of the plans directly impact because that's direct to consumer for them, right? When they go to the employer group, it's kind of direct to consumer. It's more like B2B2C. Those kind of Medicare Advantage plans, it's very regulated by CMS, going like, you have to send this size letter, this size template go out. So they're kind of boxed in sometimes, right? And what the challenge becomes is using the tableaus of all those things, they identify who they want to trigger. And I'll give you an example which makes better sense. Let's say they want to trigger their population to do annual wellness visit, which is not an exam. It's just a checklist. You go to a doctor and then go boom, 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 just like, you go get your oil change. That's a check light list, right? And then it identifies what's your health look like. Do you need an exam? And it creates the next steps for you, right? Currently, if I were to take Medicare Advantage, the industry standard, the percentage of the people does annual wellness visit is below 20%. If you get to 30% and above, you are superstar. When you look at it, it's paid for. You have an insurance. Why aren't people doing it? I think it's the why consumers are not getting triggered. They get a letter, says, go do your annual wellness visit. Okay, where do I go get it done? Which doctor will do it? Do I have to pay something? Or if your insurance company is sending you a letter, is the consumer thinking, whoa, what's in it for them? Are they charging me more? Is my premium going to go up if I go do this, right? People start thinking like, no, let's not use insurance. Like think about auto insurance. Like I'll just pay out of pocket because I don't want insurance to, trigger. So why not educate the consumer better? And what I mean by the why, the way we would handle that, we would, when we put the data in our platform, all the member data, all the conditions data, right? It then based on rule-based, it triggers what that communication should be for that person at a personalized level. So taking the same direct mail, let's say it's a direct mail, but direct mail goes out and they're looking at it, okay, I need to do annual wellness visit, and here's why. Maybe giving some ideas of the content, and here's the doctors within X radius of their location, which is very easy to find, right? Because you have their network provider data, you have their mailing data. Yes. Why aren't you connecting the dots, make it easier, right? That's one angle. Let's say now they have a question. They pick up the phone, call the customer service. And customer service is now utilizing our platform because now we've moved them away from that print flat letter, which you can make it very interactive, right? Customer service now has this AI-driven, machine learning-driven platform that we have that actually predicts behavioral changes, right, based on their conditions. So they're having a much more educated conversation. Not only that, they're able to explain them the benefits. And not only that, they can say, oh, hey, by the way, it looks like if you actually do these 3 things, we have a reward system. And we can actually reward you for the well behavior. Let's say they don't pick up the phone. They're the millennials, they're the young guys, they have the app, which we have a consumer-facing process too, right? Activities, your health report is built in through the eye of your insurance company because end of the day, they're the payers. They know what you have to pay, what you don't have to pay because, the doctor's going to do the service, but they need to know. They're like your bank. So we give that activity empowering the consumer, and we have a AI-driven chatbot where consumer can ask, like, why do I need this? What's this? It's humanizing the conversation because health decisions are emotional, personal. People don't like to always open up. So we try to take the barriers out. And what we have seen in the Medicare Advantage world, if somebody does annual wellness visit, the percentage of those people actually following through to fill their gaps, such as if they have diabetes, so they do the screening, are much higher. So we try to identify what can trigger the next paths and improve that behavioral flow rather than let's bombard them for 5 different letters because we really want them. But you already know if you can close this, most likely these people are going to be doing this. And if they don't, because our platform shows which segment hasn't, now trigger to only them. You don't have to keep sending the same letter. The people are actually good, right? If I keep telling my kids, hey, make sure you do your homework. Dad, I'm getting straight A's. I know I got to do my homework. Like, maybe I reward them in a different way. It's like, hey, great, you finish your homework. Do you want to do this? So, like, we create that personalization through the platform. And I think that's intriguing to a lot of our clients that it's a model that the Amazons of the world, the Facebooks of the world have already perfected. Healthcare is very backdated. I think financial industry is getting a lot faster. They're closing the gap. About 10 years ago, financial industry was as bad as the healthcare. But if you look at it now through your mobile app, you can deposit a check, you can do this. It's so much better. Then you look at companies like Quicken Loans can do you can do your mortgage. Imagine mortgage, those 500 pages you got to sign. It's out, right? So my point is, if they could have done that in the regulated industry in the last 10 years, why can't healthcare? They can. And that's the change we want to make.
Hear more of my interview with Enam Noor of Insight and Health on part 2 of the No BS Marketing Show. Thanks for joining us for the No BS Marketing Show, brought to you by Laramore's men's and women's designer clothing. Free shipping, free returns. Shop men's and women's designer clothing, shoes, accessories, jewelry, and more online at laramores.com or in-store downtown Pittsburgh. Hey, if you like the No BS Marketing Show, post a review. Your positive comments go a long way towards spreading the word about the No BS Marketing Show. Thanks in advance for taking the time. If you'd like to ask me a question or suggest a guest or anything else related to the show, email me at dave@masssolutions.biz. Look forward to hearing from you. Visit masssolutions.biz for show notes plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Sign up for the No BS Marketing Weekly Update. You'll receive timely, valuable ideas to improve your marketing and transform your message. It's light, intended to be read in a couple of minutes, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz, B-I-Z. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.